to Finding Beauty with Kelly. I'm Kelly and I'm joined with my kiddo. She's on her own channel with Daddy called Captain Unfair and Scrump, and she wanted to help me bake some sourdough bread today. Or I should say sourdough discard bread. I have just started working with sourdough, and I mentioned that in my channel revamp video. And so I've yet to get the timing right where my starter is ready to start the 2-day process of baking real sourdough.
Oh yeah.
But I have found a recipe. It's called the easiest sourdough discard bread you'll ever make. And it's on the Pantry Mama's website. And I have the recipe linked in the description below. So if you are trying to make sourdough bread, this is an excellent recipe. And her website is full of amazing tips on how to work with sourdough, keep your sourdough starter going, and just tips and tricks as well as delicious recipes. We made her cheese sourdough discard waffles for dinner a couple nights ago for chicken and waffles, and they were delicious.
Yes, super.
Yeah, and I'll drop that recipe down below too. So, but like I said, we're doing sourdough discard bread today. And with my ingredients out here, it's only 5 ingredients, and I don't have any measuring cups out. And you might be thinking, wait a minute, how can you bake without measuring cups? Because baking is science, and you need exact measurements. The secret is a food scale.
Yep.
And for all of my baking, I have now pretty much switched over to using a food scale so I can get exact measurements. And I use grams, and it's the easiest thing ever. You seem like you wanted to say something.
The food scale has saved us more than once in the kitchen.
Yes, so what I do is I zero it out and then I put my bowl on. So then I can basically just start adding my ingredients to the bowl. So for the flour, I get the amount of flour. Her recipe calls for bread flour, but you can also use all-purpose, which is what I use. It's the easiest to find.
Yep. And also, it's not as expensive as that ridiculous priced bread flour.
We're not going to say ridiculously priced, but when you're looking at maximizing the value, if all-purpose flour works as opposed to a more expensive option, I typically am going to go with the all-purpose because I'm looking to get the most bang for my buck. So I am just measuring out my flour. I keep it in an airtight bin. And so getting this in here. And for all the ingredients and the measurements, they will be linked in the recipe below. Okay, I'm about 5 grams over with my flour, but I think that'll be okay. So in these containers, I have containers like this. I keep my coffee in a container just like this. They're vacuum sealed, OXO. So if you're interested in these, I've got a link for them down below. Then our next ingredient is water. And for this one, I do tweak the measurement from her original recipe to something that was posted in the comment. When you're using all-purpose flour as opposed to bread flour, you may need to back off the amount of water you use. So I'm gonna go grab the water and I'll be right back. So have my water and measuring it out into another cup before I put it in my bowl of flour. So like I said, I'm backing it off from the full amount, and over the multiple times I've made this is the amount that I found works great for us, and I've had very good results with it. So have the amount I need, and I'm going to pour it into our bowl.
Where are the eggs?
We don't use eggs in this one. This isn't an egg recipe.
Oh.
And so the next ingredients that we need are yeast and salt, and I'm using this little bowl, and I'm going to just get the amount I need. And again, I just pour until my food scale tells me I have the right amount. So we're good there. Can you dump this in for me, kiddo?
Yep, I will, Mama.
And then salt. I just I have all natural sea salt, fine. That's what I prefer to use. You can use whatever salt you have. Yep. Yep, I need a little bit more. That'll be fine. So go ahead and dump that one in.
A little tip is, I forgot what I was gonna say.
It's okay. And so now for our favorite ingredient, I had just fed my starter before starting making this loaf, and so I just put it in this mason jar, and I'm going to pour into my measuring cup the amount I need.
I remembered what I was gonna say.
Okay.
What I was gonna say was, you always should give your food scale, if you're using a food scale, a little minute to catch up, and because you could pour way too much in and your food scale just can't catch up with it, so you need to give it a little pause to kind of get ready to tell you the exact amount that's in it.
That's a very good tip. I've put too much water in things, not giving it enough time to catch up. So now we've got our starter. And pouring that in. So let's do that. We're gonna do a scrapey scrape. Can you go grab the plastic wrap out of the pantry, kiddo?
Yes, I will.
Thank you. So now we're gonna just mix the dough gently, and it doesn't have to be perfect. This is gonna be a shaggier dough, and just kind of get it mixed together here.
I got the plastic wrap.
Thank you. Reaching to get. I find I should have just grabbed my spatula. I know better than to use a spoon because everything sticks to the spoon, but that's okay. So just kind of get everything folded together, make sure everything's wet. And you want to make sure you're not over mixing.
Because overmixed dough never turns into good bread.
Yeah.
We know.
We've had some experiments where things have been overmixed, undermixed. So this one, just make sure all the flour is wet, and a few more turns the bowl. And so you can see it's not a precise dough, it's just a nice kind of shaggy dough. And so now we are going to cover this with plastic wrap and let it hang out for about 2 hours to rise, or until it's doubled in size. It could be an hour or 2 hours depending on the temperature of your home. Lately I've been finding it's about 2 hours for rise time. So we'll see you in about 2 hours to show you the next steps. So one thing while your dough is rising, what you are going to want to do about 45 minutes before you're ready to bake it, you are going to want to get a Dutch oven and preheat it in your oven. I like using our small oven for bread. A lot of times I don't want to just fire up the big oven. This works great for us. So about 45 minutes before I'm ready to bake it, I get my Dutch oven and I stick it in there as I preheat the oven. That way it is nice and hot and ready to go when it's time. So it's been a couple hours and we've let our dough rise, and Scrump is unwrapping our bowl. And as you can see, our dough has increased in size, and it's a bit of a wet dough. So most of the time, I just end up dumping it out. So I have a sheet of parchment paper on the counter with some flour, and I just get my spatula and I scrape it down.
Plastic wrap is sticky.
Yes, it is. And so as you can see, it's a wet, kind of a looser wet dough. And so the object here is going to be to just kind of shape it as best we can into a loaf. And you can use your hands, but it's a stickier dough, so I just use a spatula And I do my best to shape it into a round shape and kind of just fold it over.
What's he said?
Fold it over into a loaf shape. And so we got this folded up, and it will become more round as it bakes. And so I have it shaped into the best of a loaf as I can. I need you to watch out because this is very hot. It's been heating in an extremely hot oven. And my Dutch oven is about 3.5 quarts in size. I have 4.5 quart Dutch ovens linked below for those if you want to pick one up for yourself. And so you take your bread on parchment paper.
Just plop it in there.
Carefully.
Yes,
because the Dutch oven is very hot. It's been in preheating for about 45 minutes. And I'm going to trim up the parchment paper.
You really do not want to be touching that if it's been preheating at 433.
No. So it does take hot temperature.
Mm-hmm.
So just cut this. And it doesn't have to be perfect. I just like to get most of the excess off.
Mm-hmm.
And then I carefully just kind of tuck it around. And
Oven mitts, very important.
yes. And so you can see we've got the bread in here. And so now I'm going to cover it up. I must have tried to grab that without the oven mitts.
Bad idea to not use the oven mitts.
So we bake it covered for 30 minutes. And then after 30 minutes, we're going to remove the lid, reduce the temperature down to 390, and then bake it for another 10 to 15 minutes to get it nice and brown and crusty. So it's been 30 minutes, and now it's time to take the lid off and do the last baking step. So carefully, we're getting in here and pulling off the lid. Make sure we have, see the steam coming off and starting to get golden. We've got that nice crusty appearance to it. So we're gonna slide it back in. Very carefully, making sure we don't burn ourselves.
Right. That'd be very bad.
Then can you turn the temperature down to 390? And then the time down to 12 minutes.
And you might be wondering why we don't just go to 15 minutes, because you can always add more baking time to something, but you can't unbake stuff if you burn it.
Correct. Our bread is done, and here is our wonderful crusty bread straight.
That looks great.
Yes, so it's got to sit for a while. We'll let it cool, and then we'll be able to cut into it in a little bit. So we hope you've enjoyed baking with us, and I hope you'll continue to check in, watch videos with us, and see what we're up to next. Thank you.
Bye.